What's up, everybody? My name is Sucker. In today's video, we're going to be talking about some NBA head coaches who might already be on the hot seat. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like rating on it. Check out my socials in the description as well. And let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so this conversation obviously comes up because Luke Walton just got fired from the Kings. I did an entire video about his tenure in Sacramento yesterday, if you guys want to check that out. But it got me thinking, where are we at with some of these teams? Because there's a lot of weird records right now in the NBA, whether it be teams that you thought would be competitors at the beginning of the season that are, around 500. There's a lot of, just when you pull up the standings, there's just a lot of weirdness happening in the NBA. So I thought, are there some teams might be looking to make some changes to the head coaching position? So I just want to kind of talk it out, right? Talk through a couple of different situations that I think could possibly be looking at getting a new head coach for their team. So first, of course, you got to start with some of the worst teams in the league from a record standpoint. And that includes teams like the Detroit Pistons and Dwayne Casey, who obviously came from Toronto. Nick Nurse has done an awesome job in Toronto, but he's a pretty well-respected guy. And this Detroit team is just, quite frankly, not very good. I don't think you can really blame Dwayne Casey too much for how bad this team has been from a record standpoint. But at the same time, I mean, that's never really been a requirement for teams to move on from a head coach. They've never really needed to blame the coach for the team's failures. They've just decided, hey, this guy's just not going to work. And I think in the long term, Detroit will probably be fine. Cade has looked better lately. Jeremy Grant is a nice trade piece. They're going to continue to have good draft selections. But with Casey specifically, I don't really see them making a change this year. They just gave him a contract extension over the summer through 2024. Obviously, you just got Cade, and he's not the only young guy on this team. There's a ton of them. And you'd like for them to have some consistency here. It seems like Detroit is going about this the right way, where they're not just going to continue to recycle through coaches. Dwayne Casey's probably about as good as they're going to do from a coaching standpoint anyway. So it doesn't really make sense to try and move on from him just because the team isn't performing well. Where they're at right now is probably right around the expectation they had for this group coming in the season. It's a long-term thing there in Detroit, so I don't think Dwayne Casey is necessarily going to be on a hot seat this season. Again, as we continue our theme of some of the worst teams in the league, Jamal Mosley with the Orlando Magic. Again, he literally just got there. It's his first season. They've had some nice moments. I think some of their young guys are really developing nicely. I really wouldn't be worried about him. And then, sticking with the Eastern Conference, when you continue to look at some of these other teams that maybe have disappointing records, the Pacers just got Rick Carlisle. He's not going anywhere. Nate McMillan was basically one of the biggest reasons why they ended up playing well at the end of last year. He just got there. They're not going to fire him. And of course, even though the Raptors record is right around 500, they're not going to get rid of Nick Nurse, of course. So now we go to the Western Conference, some of the worst records on that side. Steven Silas with the Rockets. They're just going to be bad. I mean, I think they've lost like 15 in a row. Again, they're just not a good basketball team, and they're very clearly not trying to be. I mean, John Wall is on the bench of these games making $40 million just watching the basketball game. He's healthy. He's just watching everybody else play. I don't know if their stance on that will change at any point this year, but if it does, obviously that would help them at least a little bit. But right now, it's all about Jalen Green. It's about Şengün. It's about these other guys that they brought in. They've got like 4 first-round rookies or 4 rookies in general that are getting at least some amount of time, including Şengün and Green. Eric Gordon is out there doing some things, but really the goal right now is develop the young guys, showcase some of the veterans that you could possibly trade away. I think Silas has done a fine job. Again, maybe next year, but you got to remember, Luke Walton has been there for a little bit over 2 years, and that roster was more ready-made to at least be kind of a fringe play-in team than like teams like Detroit and Houston are right now. So I wouldn't be too concerned if I was Steven Silas about my job. Then we look at the Pelicans, another team with an awful record. But again, a guy that just got there in Willie Green. It's his first year there. Granted, they've had 3 coaches in 3 years, but I mean, the Pelicans are a disaster of a franchise anyway, so if they fired Willie Green tomorrow, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, that wouldn't surprise me at all, but that doesn't have anything to do with Willie Green and the job that he's done as a coach. It just has everything to do with the Pelicans as a franchise and just the dysfunction that they constantly live in. They've had a ton of injury issues. Zion's not playing. Brandon Ingram missed a ton of games at the beginning of the year. I can't blame Willie Green. But now we get to some teams, that maybe are a little bit more intriguing. So the Spurs are keeping Pop. They are somewhat in it for the long haul here. They're 4-12, I believe, as of the recording of this video, but they're quite frankly one of, if not the least talented team in the entire league. Like, there can't have been an expectation that Pop was going to somehow magically make this, a playoff team. I think the Timberwolves are fine. I think they finally figured out the head coaching thing. They might not make the playoffs this season. I know they really want to, but I think they're fine from a coaching standpoint. The Thunder obviously in it for the long run. Now let's talk about the LA Lakers. So this one might seem dramatic, but you got to understand the situation we're dealing with here. LeBron has had zero hesitation in the past about, and I don't want to say that he's necessarily getting these coaches fired, but if LeBron was to come to the Lakers, be like, hey, I don't know if Vogel's the guy, like I'm sure they would at least take that into consideration. You go back to the David Blatt-Ty Lue thing. David Blatt was like 30-11 at the time that he got fired. Ty Lue actually had a worse regular season record than Ty Lue did in that season in which they won the title with his first year head coach in Ty Lue. And, you know, Luke Walton as well is another guy that kind of got forced out. It would not be a surprise to me at all if we get towards the trade deadline and it's just like, you know what, we need a change. We need a different voice. They've got a ton of different former head coaches on the bench there. It wouldn't shock me in any way. I'm not predicting it. I'm not saying that it's going to happen. But if their record continues to suffer, it could be a thing. Now, granted, they won a title with the guy 2 seasons ago, and they've had to deal with injury issues up and down the roster. LeBron hasn't been playing a ton. I get all that. And really a lot of their identity is tied to what Frank Vogel has always done, which is play a lot of bigs, play great defense, give effort and energy. And a lot of their identity and a lot of the reason they won the title back in 2020 in the bubble, you know, is tied to a lot of those things. So I don't necessarily think he's going to get fired, but he's an interesting name to throw out here. And then what about Taylor Jenkins for the Memphis Grizzlies? I personally think that he's a very good coach. I think he's perfect for what this team is trying to do. But at the beginning of the year, there was definitely, and there has been some buzz about, oh, well, maybe it's time to move on from this guy. Maybe we need a more, you know, mature, more experienced head coach. We're a team that's, you know, ready to win more basketball games than we are. They come off a huge win against the Jazz last night. But in general, I think Jenkins and this team are on the same timeline. He's still trying to grow and develop as a coach and learn. And the rest of this team is as well. And I know Memphis had some nice success last year. They won a playoff game against Utah, but they're still not ready. I mean, they're still not ready to be a top 5 team in the West. And I think from an organizational, from a head coaching, from a player standpoint, they're all kind of on the right track. They're trying to, a couple of years from now, have a ton of upside, have a ton of really good players. And with Jaren Jackson at the center of it, and I think that Taylor Jenkins is the guy to kind of have move this group along in the correct direction. And so basically the point of this video is we kind of, you know, find someone else here to potentially fire. Is that there's really not a ton of situations that are conducive to a coach on the hot seat. I mean, unless we have an absolute disaster scenario somewhere like the Knicks, like if the Knicks are like 20 games under 500 somehow, or the Sixers, like, you know, it's going to be tough is what I'm saying. The Walton thing, I thought he was going to get fired at the beginning of last year, quite frankly, but he had failed for 2 years. He completely changed around the way that the team worked, and it was just very clearly time to move on. Had some issues with the players there as well. But really, it's either, when you look at the current situations around the league outside of Sacramento, it's either a coach that just got there, it's a young coach, it's a coach like Casey that has, you know, some long-term security here, or it would have to be something super dramatic like the Lakers making a move, or someone making like a Nate McMillan style, you know, middle of the year, we need to shake things up firing. And I don't see that on any of these teams. Now, granted, there's always a couple guys that get fired every year, and most of the time it is a pretty big surprise. So I wouldn't be shocked at all if something crazy did happen. In a normal circumstance, the number one pick here for me in like a coaches on the hot seat draft would probably be Dwayne Casey. And, you know, if you just put everything that's happening right now in Detroit and you put that in New Orleans, I would expect Dwayne Casey to get fired because he's been there for a year or two and they're not playing well, but they seem to be kind of focused on the long term. So I'm cool with it. You know, I want to see these guys. There's a lot of young coaches in the league, man, and it definitely takes some time to, you know, get your feet wet a little bit and fully understand not only what it takes to be a head coach, but fully understand your team. And so I'm cool with these guys getting some time to really grow and develop in their position, really learn on the job. And if you're going to hire a young coach, if you're going to hire Willie Green, you know, if you're going to hire Taylor Jenkins, you need to do so with the understanding that, yeah, they're young and they're exciting. They've got new ideas, but these guys are also going to, you know, learn and develop along the way as well. And if you want someone that's experienced and ready to go from the jump, then hire an older guy, you know? So I'm excited to see how these guys will continue to grow and develop as coaches. And I'm not really concerned about any of them being on the hot seat as of now, but hey, 20 games from now, all that could absolutely change. But that's going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you guys very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, be sure to check out the box on screen, check out my socials as well in a link tree down in the description below. With all this thing said, hope you guys have an awesome rest of your Tuesday, and I will see you all next time.